Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. If you click on the link right here in the description, you'll bypass the $1 Apple upcharge. You pay $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. This is the place for heat, information, conversation, and consternation. It's where you can complain about the team all night long. If that's what you want to do, I might check in on it occasionally, as do any of our other hosts. Again, check it out. It's Off the Floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. PrizePicks.com is the official fantasy partner of the Five Reasons Sports Network. You can play up to 6 players together. You can play across the sports spectrum. You can make the NBA season interesting, even if the games lately have not been. So check it out. It's prizepicks.com. Yes, legal in the state of Florida. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah. Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne.
Yikes. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs.
Down to Biscayne.
Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, well, we told you we were going to ramp up the episodes in March. We were hoping the Heat would ramp up their play. That has not happened. They've lost 7 straight, but the episodes keep coming. For me, I feel like I'm committed to do like 4 podcasts a day lately. I don't know why I've done this. And others for the Five Reasons Sports Network doing a bunch of these 2-person episodes. Make sure you check out the one that I did with with our guy Matt Hannafin, your protege, Eternal. We'll introduce Eternal in a second. With Matt Hannafin, we did the latest in our draft series. Would the Heat use both of their first-round picks if they get 2 first-round picks? That's one of the things that we discussed. Also spoke to Greg Sylvander, our Heat culture guy. I feel like I have to go to him for all the narrative episodes. We're like 3 days away from 4 days away from Pat Riley's 80th birthday. By the time that you listen to this, he's turning 80 on Thursday. Where's Heat culture at right now? Greg and I got into a long discussion about that. Now we're going to bring on Eternal Bast. You can follow him. Again, I'm Ethan J. Skolnick, Five Reasons Sports. You know all that. Eternal Bast, you can follow him at Eternal Bast. Makes it convenient for you. You can also find him as one of the hosts on our Playback channel. Check it out, playback.tv/5RSN. Watch the games with us. We had Eternal on there yesterday for that fast break. You were in the arena in Memphis. You got to see somehow a 4-on-1 break turn into a Tyler Hero fall-away 3-pointer from the corner. At that point, we pretty much lost you, my friend.
Oh, my God.
So you're just back for the vibes. Okay, here's what we want to do today. And again, you were there and you saw some of the behind-the-scenes stuff there yesterday. I think what frustrated people so much about the Memphis game, and now we're going into by the way, you've been there for 2 of their worst performances lately. I'm not sending you anymore. You went to the Atlanta game where they scored 86. That was the most painful offensive performance of the season. This was one of the more painful defensive performances of the season. Well, collective performances. But now they've lost 7 straight. I'm looking at our board here. They're in New York tonight. Typically, I would have flown up for this, but why? They're on the way to losing 10 or 11 straight. The only thing standing in the way of an 11-game losing streak is they play Charlotte on the 11th game, and then Jimmy Butler comes to town after that. By the way, you know Jimmy's numbers were better in Miami? Nobody wants to talk about that because he's winning.
They were
across the board. Shooting percentage, too. It's not just efficiency. He was 54% Miami. He's 44% Golden State, but now he's a savior because he's playing with Steph. Okay, but we were going to ask you basically about the vibes, but I want to ask you a question on paper here, okay? Before we get into what you witnessed. I'm going to give you. I've done this on another pod, but I don't know that you've heard it. I'm going to give you 2 starting lineups from last night. Okay, and you're going to tell me if on paper this should have been a mismatch. John Morant did not play. Okay. Before this season, and I know your feelings about one of these players, but before this season, okay, and one of these players, by the way, became an all-star this season. He was the only, well, one other guy was. 2 of the 4 were, one on each team. But before this season, do you believe that most Heat fans would have said if you stacked up a healthy Tyler Hero and a healthy Bam Adebayo against a healthy Jaren Jackson Jr. and a healthy Desmond Bane, that it would be pretty much a wash?
I think before the season, I think people would have gave the edge to Desmond Bane. I still do. And I think people would have gave the edge to Bam, right?
Okay.
Now,
yes.
Obviously, for the longer stretch of the season, Jaren Jackson has just been playing at a different level, right? Contrary to Bam. And Dez hasn't really been his usual self. He's had some usual games. He had some, below games. So I guess you could, give Tyler the edge. Now, Tyler
Desmond was not an all-star this year, though Tyler was, right? I mean, again, different conference, but is it fair to call that? Okay, I'll say this: is it fair to call that? I understand Jaren Jackson Jr. has probably been the best of the 4 this year, but it would be fair to call that close enough to a wash.
No, it should be close. It should be close.
Okay. So let's get to the next part of this. Duncan Robinson started. So did Luke Kennard. Would most people consider that to be pretty close to a wash?
I think people that probably watch both of them would give Duncan the edge. Right. I'm not making this any better, but No.
You're taking this down the direction that I want to go, so you're fine. Okay. Most people would say Duncan, right?
Right.
Would most Heat fans trade Duncan Robinson for Luke Kennard, contracts aside?
I mean, people that are not in their emotions.
Most would not, Eternal.
Nah.
Most would not. I mean, at worst, it's considered a wash. I mean, Duncan has accomplished more in his career than Luke Kennard has, but they're both shooters. That's why I'm equating.
Hell, you'll have Memphis fans like how Miami feels about Duncan is how Memphis feels about Luke. Like
feels about Kennard. Okay,
they'll
wash. At worst, should be a wash.
Right.
Okay. Now the other 2 pieces of the starting lineups last night, and we're recording this on Sunday night. So the game was Saturday. The other 2 parts were Andrew Wiggins, former number 1 overall pick and a champion who contributed to that championship in a significant way. Kel'el Ware, 15th overall pick in the draft. On the other side, where was Zach Edey drafted? 9th? Hold on. He was drafted. I apologize for not checking this in advance, but I think he was drafted 9th, wasn't he? He was a lottery pick?
Yeah, he was a lottery pick.
Hold on a second.
It was either 9th or 8th.
He was selected in the first round. Oh, come on. Give me more of that. Okay. You can never trust Wikipedia for anything. You got to go to Basketball Reference. All right. So he was picked 9th. Thank you. I was right the first time. Okay. So on one side, Andrew Wiggins, veteran guy, drafted 1st overall, was a player that was coveted in that draft and has, I know, been a disappointment at times, but accomplished things in his NBA career. We just disappeared, Eternal.
No.
Okay, there you're back. Okay. And on the other side, Zach Edey, who was drafted 9th in this draft. The other 2 players that started yesterday were Kel'el Ware, drafted 15th in this draft, and Jalen Wells, who was drafted in the 2nd round. If you were to put their pedigrees against each other, Andrew Wiggins and Kel'el Ware versus Zach Edey and Jalen Wells, wouldn't the Heat have an advantage there? Or at worst, that would be considered a wash just based on pedigree? I know Edey was College Player of the Year, but just based on pedigree, right?
I mean, just based off of how this season has gone, I think, relatively speaking, Kel'el has had a better season than Zach.
Okay. And Wiggins has accomplished more than Jalen Wells, although I think both you and I like Jalen Wells, right?
Yeah, no. Now, listen. Now, you could make a case that it's a look as far as play goes this season. It's a little closer. Jalen has been a super rookie.
Terrific.
But
I like the player. They like the player. The Heat like the
but
player. I'm not arguing with that.
as
But
far as
on
pedigree, yes,
pedigree,
yeah, it should
okay.
be a plus
Okay.
on the Heat side in those two man groupings.
So we have established the 5 starters for the game last night,
Right.
and the 5 starters should have been edge Heat without Morant.
Right.
And then you go to the bench, and the guy that hurt them the most was Scottie Pippen Jr., who the Heat literally could have had at any time. He went to my high school, Pinecrest, okay, in Fort Lauderdale. He's bounced around. I know he's had a good year for them. And Brandon Clark, who's had to kind of rejuvenate his career after a series of injuries. I understand the Heat bench is thin right now. They're playing Rozier. Davion Mitchell's not getting the minutes he was before. But I guess my overall point on this, Eternal, and I apologize for dragging you along the way.
No.
This should not have looked like that.
No, it should
This
not.
is not a mismatch on paper last night without Morant, right?
But I think Ethan, the difference is that team has a different energy. That team has a different goal. They have a different plan. They know who they are. They know who their core pieces are. Like when we talk about core pieces, I think sometimes just like the big 3 thing, I think that is overused in some instances, and I think it's misused. Because I think just because you have a grouping of guys that are talent-wise, skill-wise, the better players, doesn't necessarily mean in the grand scheme of your plans they are your core 3 or your core 4, and whatever, right? I think when you look at Memphis, the distinct difference is they have a legitimate core 3. You know who their superstar is. You know who like Jaren Jackson is working himself up towards a certain status, right? Because he has been very dependable on both ends. Now the rebounding may not be what you want it to be, but the man has been stellar on defense. He's been very, very aggressive on offense. You look at his metrics and his numbers; they are very, very impressive. You look at his play. I mean, he was just getting whatever the hell he wanted to last night against a very, very great defender in Bam. But I think when you look at that, you know exactly what Memphis has, right? Now, the question that will come for those that watch Memphis is this enough to get them to the promised land of winning a championship, right? That's a totally different goddamn question for what you have for Miami, which is who stays, right? Who stays next season?
Right.
And what is the plan for next season? What's the plan for the next 2 seasons and going forward? That's a total.
But I get it. But Eternal, to follow on that, and after the break, I want to dive into this a little more.
Mm-hmm.
To follow on that, look, John Morant missed last season, pretty much, right? Okay, he's missed a lot of time. Over the course of time, Memphis found ways to play without him, right? There was the one year that Tyus Jones played really well. They won a lot of games. Last year, that didn't happen. The team sunk, okay? And then this year, they've had Ja for the majority. They've trended away from him a little bit more this year. Like you said, it's a little bit more Jaren Jackson's team, but he's still there. The Heat were playing better when Jimmy was with them, but not playing, okay, than they've played since they traded Jimmy. So is it fair to say at this point that a lot of this is just them knowing, the Heat knowing that they don't have anybody coming to save them? Because that feels like a component here. Because again, Memphis played well last night without their signature player, right? They played well with a roster that lines up pretty evenly with what Miami had put out there, at least in terms of pedigree, and they dominated them from start to finish. They made them look silly. Jaren Jackson Jr. was laughing when he was making jumpers. His 23rd point in the first half, he made it over Bam, and he was laughing, okay? Like they demoralized them. You saw this there, okay? And is this just simply that like what Tyler said at the break, we're not contenders when he said that on NBA, and they've just completely let go of the rope? Or is this what some think, like Sean thinks, this is just a talent issue? Like I'm trying to reconcile those two things because, again, I'm looking at the talent. The talent's not great, but what Memphis put on the floor last night was not that much better, if at all.
I think there is a talent discrepancy, but I think more so than that is how strong is your will, right? You look at some of the play of Davion, right? And I think what inspires people about him is he gets out there and compete, right? And I think what you have saw over the course of this, or seen over the course of this season, is that guys' will has been tested, either with the Jimmy stuff, either with some injuries. You talked about the last couple of seasons, Ethan, you and Greg. Have they reached a point where they're tired of each other? I don't think it's necessarily that. But I think, man, like, damn, we heading towards another play-in? And you just like, how are we? Okay, I'm asking Spo. You're hearing the questions to Spo. Spo, how do you keep the guys even keeled? How do you're searching for answers, and you're looking at the players in the locker room or on the court, and they're searching for answers, right? Well, you ever been at that point in your life where just you're trying, but nothing is like really working in the way that you want it to do? Something has to some gotta break. Like
it feels like, and that's kind of the title of this episode. I mean, their will is broken, essentially. Like it just and I think part of it is not knowing that Jimmy's going to come back to save them, but it's also, I think, the nature of the play-in, which to me sucks. I mean, I don't like it. I haven't liked it since the beginning. I know Spo likes it. I don't like it. But like this, I think there would be more competitive spirit if you were fighting for eighth right now. And I know that some don't want the Heat to fight for eighth. The organization wants to get in the playoffs. I know, because of the unrestricted nature of the picks going forward and everything that would happen. The fan base wants the pick now. The fan base does not want them making the playoffs. And legitimately, like, the Heat could lose. They could lose every game the rest of the season, still get the 10 spot. Like, that is possible. Like, look at Toronto, look at Chicago, I'm sorry. Look at Toronto, look at Philadelphia, look at Brooklyn. The Heat could lose every game the rest of the year. Where they have 27 wins, they could finish 27-55 and find a way to squeak in 10th. It's doable, okay? And if that happened, they could still win 2 road games, because Bam gets hot one night and Tyler gets hot the other night, and then they're getting swept by Cleveland. The system is ridiculous. It's stupid. Okay, at least have them compete for the 8th spot. That's my preference. And I know Heat fans will say, "Well, they got out of the play-in," but from my recollection, the Heat were never worse than 8th, right? In the 2 previous years of the play-in, they were 7th or 8th. So they would have made the playoffs anyway. But
actually, they would have been 7th both seasons.
Right. Okay. So it's a question of losing one, and we don't. And then Strus saved them that one game against Chicago and all that. But to me, all of this has fed into, I don't know if it's complacency, but it's just like, what are we doing this for? That's what it feels like with this team right now. And that's why you mentioned when Larson has like a 5-minute stretch that he's on the floor, or Davion Mitchell is fighting over screens, it's jumping out to you, because it's like, oh, wait a second, we're not really used to seeing this. We used to see this with the Heat. We're not seeing this right now. All right, we're going to talk about this more on the other side of the break. Before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them at allproconstructionbuilders.com. We know that's not hurricane season yet, but it's always around the corner. South Florida, you got to get those windows, the storm windows for your home, your place of business, all of that done for you, and get it done by a local business with Heat fans. Yes, they're right in this with you, and a family business, okay, that uses the best materials and has the best reputation. That's All Pro Construction Builders, 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. It's allproconstructionbuilders.com. Again, that's allproconstructionbuilders.com. Reach out to Danny and his team. If you mention 5 Reasons, this is important, or 5 on the floor, or 305 guys, or any of the things we do with the number 5, mention us. You get 5% off your entire order, and that adds up. So reach out to them, All Pro Construction Builders, or allproconstructionbuilders.com. All right, let me ask you this. Again, you were in Memphis. You witnessed this. You were in the locker room. There are always off-color things said in the locker room, so I'm not going to make you repeat them. Do you get the sense they care?
I think the guys do, right? Like when you talk to Andrew last night, and you hear him just saying, like, we're just trying to get over the hump. I think guys do, but I also think guys know what the deal is. I think guys know what the deal is, man. Like, no matter how bad you want something, it don't necessarily mean you're gonna always get it.
Right.
How bad, no matter how much you're working at. Like, oh, you're waking up tomorrow, you're going to the gym, you're doing 2 a days. You're not gonna lose 30 pounds in a week.
Yep.
Just because you're working for it.
I felt this way when I saw Jessica Alba at a bar. It just, and he did. Jax and I saw her at a bar in New York, and it was just like, nope, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
I
Another
think
lifetime, maybe, but no, we're not contenders. As Tyler said, as Tyler would have said, he would have looked at me at that moment and said, "You're not a contender for this," and I wasn't. Anyway.
All right, man.
All right. Give me some hope. Give me some hope before we close here, before they play the Knicks. And by the way, I don't think the Knicks will sit. Brunson's out, right? But like the rest of them, Tibbs is still going to play him 45 minutes, regardless of what Mikal Bridges asks for. So give me some hope. What good is going to come out of these last, whatever it is, 16, 18 games of the season?
Your rookies are getting some play. You know.
So then should more of them play?
I think more of them should, honestly. But I think just with the machinations of the team, like, it's kind of hard, right? Like, Tyler is due for an extension. He hasn't been playing his best ball. Like, it's been very inconsistent. I do think because they were a part of such a long era, Ethan, with Jimmy and the way it ended, I do think some guys are wondering in the back of their mind if the writing is on the wall for them as well, you know. And I think that that makes things a little awkward, because if you do just make a shift to the young guys, right? Say, all right, cool, like if they lose all the games this week, right? Then you're not going to make up enough ground to like really.
You're not making up enough ground anyway. But Eternal, I'm looking at the games this week, and I'm seeing the Knicks on the road, Detroit at home. The Heat lost to them twice when they were playing much better than this, and the Pistons weren't playing this well. And Houston at home. That's a team the Heat can't run with. And
they got 4 games this week, right?
Well, they got 3. They're going to lose all 3 this week, and then they get Charlotte on Sunday at 6:00. But we saw what happened in Charlotte last time. Okay, but we're counting that as the 4th. But they got 3 more to potentially have do you know what a 10-game losing streak is going to feel like for these guys if they feel defeated now? Like 10-game losing streak. Like we're talking the 15 and 67 season. That's what we're talking about.
The amount. If they lose to Jimmy on Friday, and that's a home game for Miami, right?
Yes.
The last time that man had a jersey on was the Portland game when they got blew out. Right? If he comes back and he is Detroit Jimmy, that is going to be hell on earth.
Well, I have a weird feeling on this, because the Heat, even in the 14-15 season, which was a bleep show, and we did an episode about that season. It was a transitional season. A lot of similarities to this. And you mentioned about guys knowing their time was up. I remember during that season, Mario would basically follow me around the locker room and say, "One of these MFers is going to trade me." Okay. So you're talking about an era being over. Okay. Like but so that was the 14-15 season, but they got up for LeBron. So
you had Wade, and this is no knock on Tyler and Bam.
No, they're not Wade and Bosh. No, I know they're not Wade and Bosh, and that's kind of what we've learned this season. They don't. There isn't that championship kind of fortitude, even if Dwayne was not Dwayne at that point. People forget Dwayne was diminished. Okay, it was kind of the year after for 14-15 that he kind of got himself back together again to a certain degree. But they don't have it. So maybe they won't have it. But it would be remarkable if they literally lose 11 straight, including the Charlotte game, and then beat Golden State by 20. It would not shock me. It would not shock me at all.
I actually have something you can be hopeful for.
Yes.
And that is Khalil. When I talked to Karan yesterday, shout out to Karan, Coach Butler. I was asking him about Khalil and if Khalil had hit a rookie wall and whatever. He brought up the injury he had a few games ago, and he said, young guys, when they get hurt, it can feel like the end of the world, because trying to figure things out as a rookie season going. You get hurt and all of the other stuff. I'm not going to, bore you guys with the details. But he said expect him to be a lot more active tonight, and we did see him be, active, last night. So I think if there's anything to be hopeful for, it's him making rookie first team, right? Just having a strong stretch of games to solidify himself.
Eternal, I'm going to end this on a very negative note. First thing, we're going to keep quiet that you spoke to Quran because they're going to get mad that one of their assistants spoke to you. So, but it's
just delete
it. That's okay. But the second thing, it's all right. He didn't say anything bad. But the second thing is Jaime Hawkins Jr. made first team all rookie last year, and we saw what happened. Anyway, the vibes here are immaculate. We'll see if they can get back that way on the court. Thank you, Eternal.
I made all that up. I never spoke to
I never spoke to you. It wasn't him. It was it was somebody else. Anyway, have a good one.